This is the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast with your host, Greg Jameson. Influencer marketing is the process of identifying, researching, engaging, and supporting the people who create high-impact conversations with your customers. On each episode, I talk with industry leaders, business rock stars, and internet celebrities who contribute their knowledge about influencing others and growing your influence.
Welcome to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. I'm your host, Greg Jameson. And today is going to be really fun, I think, for a lot of people. As if anyone's watching this as opposed to listening to it, you can see that I've got a guest with me today. The guest's name is Jeff Hopp. Jeff and I actually met, it's been a number of years ago now. And I know in the last episode, I talked about how I'm always interviewing friends and people who have actually been over to my house to parties and whatnot. Jeff fits into that group as well. But I think that the real thing behind this is as you start to create any kind of content and you're doing anything in your business, you actually do start to build up professional friendships, and you tend to gravitate towards those people when it comes to creating your content. So that's part of what this is about. Certainly, if somebody is listening to this and they have never met me and they want to be on the show, drop me a line and we'll figure out if it's a fit or not. But today we're going to be talking about masterminding and how that's important really for every single business. I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about Jeff here. Jeff and I met, like I said, I don't remember how many years ago it was. I don't know if you remember, Jeff, but
it's probably 8 or 10 years ago. It's been a long time.
It's been a while, and it was actually over the fact that I needed to create a mobile app, and Jeff had some experience with creating mobile apps. And so we just got together at, I think, Panera Bread and started chatting and hit it off from there. So at any rate, Jeff Hopp has created some software that really helps people with their masterminding groups. And I think this is going to be a fun conversation because I've been involved in a number of masterminding groups, both live groups and virtual groups where we do it over the internet. I've looked at some of the things that Jeff's software has to offer, and I am a huge believer in the power of masterminding. So welcome, Jeff, and tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what we're going to be chatting about here today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Greg. Appreciate you having me on here. You know, my background is in sales and marketing, but I've spent the last 10 years doing online marketing, mostly marketing for local businesses. And a huge part of the reason that I've been able to do that is because of mastermind groups. When I first left the corporate world, I joined a pretty expensive mastermind group, and it was through that support and connection that I was able to be successful and to be able to run my businesses. And so I've participated in them for the last 10 years in various formats, both in person, virtual, paid, free, all sorts of different groups. And found that with a lot of groups, there were some things that made running and participating in the groups a little bit difficult. And so over time, developed a few of my systems and spreadsheets and tools that I would use and a process that I had established that made things easier, but I was juggling a ton of different programs and applications to make it happen. So it was still a little bit cumbersome. And as the result of being in a mastermind group with a product developer, came upon the idea of actually creating a product that was designed for making mastermind groups better. And so that's kind of the genesis of the product. But the things that the tool does, it follows some basic principles that everybody can apply to mastermind groups. So whether you're using any software or not, following a few simple basic tips can help people get better results out of any type of mastermind group process.
And as far as I know, you're really the only one that has a product that is kind of addressing this space at all.
It is fairly unique, and it's bringing together a few different things. And the goal is to be an all-in-one solution for running mastermind groups, which is a huge task and something that we're making a lot of progress towards. But it is a relatively unique space. And ultimately, our goal is to be the white label partner, the technology solution for the best mastermind groups in the world, and to help them achieve better results.
Okay, so we'll talk some more here about your software as we go through this, but I want to kind of start at the beginning about why masterminding is so important. And I know that, as an entrepreneur, and I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire adult life, you are the boss, basically. Even if you've got a whole bunch of employees or you are just by yourself, as the boss, you don't have somebody giving you, other than your customers maybe, giving you feedback on how well you're doing. Or is there something further that you can do to really make your business get to the next level? And I think that is really one of the most beneficial aspects of having a mastermind group, is getting together with a group of peers that are willing to kind of lay out their issues and their problems that you might be able to help them with, and you the same ways. You might find that a mastermind group is really helpful if you're in the same industry. You might find it helpful if everybody's in a different industry, but the fact that everybody is an entrepreneur at some level that you can relate to and is able to give you feedback can be, just absolutely huge in your business. I mean, talk about influence. The influence of the other people in your mastermind group is huge.
Yeah, the power of it comes from being able to draw on the knowledge of other people who will give you honest feedback, people who are outside of the frame and can see the bigger picture and really help you see things. Sometimes it's people who've been there before. And so that speaks to what you were saying about having people in the same industry, which is one approach where everybody's trying to do the same thing. There's also something to be said for mixing industries where you get different disciplines and different knowledge and skill sets. Some people, say that they want their mastermind group to be a group of people, a group of like-minded people. And I only agree with that to a certain extent, that you want it to be people who are open-minded, who are positive, who are looking to, make changes. But I also agree with what Ray Dalio says. And he says, you should find the smartest people you can that disagree with you and try to understand why. And then you can really get a much broader perspective and try to understand the other side of the equation and make better decisions that way.
Yeah, I've actually got a friend that says that he always strives to be the dumbest person in the room.
Right.
When you first hear that, you're like, what? But when you think about what he's really saying is that he wants to be in a room full of people who are brighter than him so that he can kind of absorb their knowledge. And I think that's huge.
Yep. So we should talk about a little bit about what mastermind groups are. A lot of people are familiar with the term, but sometimes in having the conversation, people need a better understanding of what they are. And my simple definition is that they're people who get together, whether virtually or in person, on a regular basis to talk about their challenges, set goals, and help each other to accomplish those goals. And a lot of times a big component of that is accountability. But the principle goes back to, it was really popularized by Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. And he was, basically hired by Andrew Carnegie, or challenged by Andrew Carnegie, to study the secrets of success. And so he spent 20 years studying thousands of successful people. And he came up with some principles for success. And one of those was the mastermind principle. Basically, that successful people help each other to be successful. But he put it in terms of the coordination of knowledge of two or more people who work together towards a definite purpose in a spirit of harmony. And I think that that's a very apt description of it, and one that we certainly use a lot. There's tons of examples throughout history and even today of people that leverage the power of mastermind. So Andrew Carnegie is one. Henry Ford was famous for masterminding with Thomas Edison and Harvey Firestone and John Burroughs. And so it's no surprise that those people were getting together on a regular basis and sharing ideas when you see the success that they've had. And then today you see it popular with people like Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield and Lewis Howes and Brendan Burchard. They all run these high-end mastermind groups. And the basic principles are things that are applied by people like Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or even Oprah. It's the idea of networking with people who are interested in success and can help contribute to your success, help you achieve it, and help hold you accountable.
Yeah, so that actually kind of makes me think of the whole concept here. You said you've participated in paid masterminds and free masterminds. Let's spend just a minute here talking about maybe the benefits or advantages or disadvantages of each of those, and why someone would pay to participate in a mastermind versus just getting a bunch of people together that are like-minded business owners, and no one is in there for making a buck, but they're in there to help each other.
Yeah. And I think there's huge advantages to the peer-to-peer groups where it is just people who are coming together for the sole purpose of helping each other. And when they work, they can be fantastic. It takes a high level of commitment for those people, for those groups to work. And so I've been a little bit surprised in all of the conversations that I've had with people who are participating and facilitating these groups in really seeing a consistent theme that a lot of times free groups don't work. And it's, there's the saying that when people pay, they pay attention. You just get a higher level of commitment when people are paying to be a part of a group. Even if it's a small amount, people show up more prepared. They're less likely to meetings. They're less likely to be multitasking during the meeting and checking their email and things like that. If you paid $100 a month to be part of the group, you're probably going to focus. But that's on the low end. A lot of these groups, there are six-figure mastermind groups where people are paying $100,000 a year to participate in these events, and they get more out of them because they put more into them because they put their money on the line.
Yeah, and I've been a part of both, and I agree. I think that part of the peer-to-peer groups is you really have to get the right people in there to begin with. I have been part of some of those that have in fact failed. We've managed to keep them going for a year or two, and then we just found out that people are they've got other things on their plate that they consider more important, and it's kind of too bad because they can really make a difference in your business, I think, if people do put the effort into it and focus on the giving aspect as much as the getting aspect.
Right. And I think, one of the big reasons that some of these groups fail is not just because people don't put money into them, but because they may not get results, because they don't always work. And sometimes they just turn into an excuse for people to get together and complain about their problems and things like that. And so in talking to hundreds of people about these groups, I've developed a few tips that can help people to get better results out of their mastermind groups. And I've based those tips around the framework of that Napoleon Hill quote about coordinating knowledge towards a definite purpose with a spirit of harmony. And so the first tip that helps people have more success and get better results from them is to have a structure and to maintain that spirit of harmony. And so a simple way to do that is to have a set agenda and know what to expect from each meeting. And that can make sure that everybody gets some time, some airtime or some time with the floor. A couple different structures that I've seen that work really well for people are just a basic round robin hot seat format where everybody gets equal time and they get to talk about their challenges, set their goals, and do a little bit of a check-in. A variation of that that's very popular is a deep dive hot seat. And so everybody may get 5 minutes to check in with their goals with the group, but then one person each meeting gets 30 to 45 minutes to do a deep dive on their challenges. And that way they get a little bit more time to really dive into the problems and get feedback from the rest of the group. but having that set format so that everybody gets some time, make sure that everybody contributes and everybody gets something out of every single meeting. So that's the big one.
Okay, so this is going to be a totally selfish thing here on my part, and it works out great for me, but I think it's going to be relevant for anybody listening to this podcast here as well. Next week, I'm actually flying out to Las Vegas to participate in a paid mastermind. And right after we take a break here, excuse me, when we come back from the break, Jeff is going to expand upon all of his great tips of how I can get the most out of my experience going to another city to a paid mastermind. And I think that those tips, like I said, they're not only going to help me next week, but they're going to help anybody listening to the podcast. So let's come back with some of those specific tips here right after this.
Are you a business owner that runs an online shop? I have a free course available for you. It goes over the features that every great product page should have. This course can double or even triple your sales, whether you are selling on a marketplace like Amazon or selling on your own e-commerce website. The examples use WordPress and WooCommerce, but are applicable to any online store. In this course, we're going to discuss buyer personas, buyer persona specific headlines, high quality photos, videos, buyer specific descriptions, specifications, short descriptions, call to actions, and social proof. You can register for this class and get free access at webstoreslimited.com/free class. This free class includes a 15-minute video lesson, a 20-page ebook, and a handy checklist. That link again is webstoresltd.com/free class.
Welcome back to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. My guest today is Jeff Hopp. And right before the break, I was telling Jeff how I'm going to be going out to Las Vegas next week to participate in a paid mastermind. And I'm going to pick his brain here a little bit and get some tips on how I can maximize my experience in that paid mastermind, but at the same time, how anybody listening to this podcast, what are some really good tips on how you can maximize your experience in any kind of a mastermind, whether it's a paid mastermind or a peer-to-peer mastermind where you've just gotten a bunch of colleagues together. So take it away, Jeff.
And so the first one that I mentioned was having the structure or creating that spirit of harmony, as Napoleon Hill mentions. If you're going to somebody else's group, you may not have as much control over what the agenda is. So that's more useful to you if you're actually running the group and making sure that you can set an agenda. Hopefully they're going to have an agenda, and most well-run groups do have an agenda. But making sure that you get some time to participate is certainly going to be key there. And then also in terms of harmony, in those types of face-to-face groups, it's making sure that you're making those connections and that you're contributing and adding positively to the group. The second tip that is in line with the Napoleon Hill quote is the definite purpose. And so that's one that you absolutely can apply when you're traveling to a group, whether it's something they're doing or not. And that's in the form of goal setting and making sure that as a result of the conversations that you have and the input that you get, that you set definite goals. And that those goals are, there's lots of different formats for setting goals. There's the SMART format that everybody's familiar with. Tony Robbins has a format that is pain and pleasure principle. So whatever goal setting methodology you prefer, make sure that you set some goals and most likely make sure that they have, timeline so that they're actually goals and not just wishes and dreams. And then the third component of that is coordinated knowledge. And so that's making sure that the process is documented. So when you're doing virtual masterminds, that might be recording the group. That might be, or for the in-person group, it might just be taking good notes. If you have a mastermind group that meets on a regular basis, it's taking that information and compiling it somewhere so that you start to build this resource library, or you start to coordinate and compile all of the knowledge of the group and all of these great tips that happen. One of the problems that I found with a lot of groups that I was in is that there would be absolute brilliance shared in our 60 to 90 minutes on the call, and then it was gone. There was no recording. There was no documentation. We were asking each other, what was that link that you shared? And maybe we're sharing it in chat somewhere. And depending on the software that you're using, the chat disappears, or the chat isn't connected to your video anywhere, or it's broken into different streams. And so taking the knowledge that is shared during that meeting and finding a way to document it and make it accessible to all of the members of the group is the thing that really helps you leverage them and take it to the next level. So it's having an agenda, setting goals, and documenting the process.
Okay, and I think that third point that you made there about documenting it is something that I've certainly found in most of the peer-to-peer groups that I've seen, is that we do impart a lot of really good knowledge, and it would be nice a month from now to be able to go back, because maybe I wasn't right, at that time I wasn't ready for that tidbit of information, even if it was just a link to some other website or whatever, and now it's like I really need that and be able to come back to it. It's also something that as I go to a paid mastermind, other than handwriting notes, which I think nobody complains about at all, but I don't know if I can be like setting up a recording device,
Well, yeah, and in some cases there's the privacy concern and disclosure, so people may not want you to record the tips that they're sharing and certainly publish them. And if you paid to go to the group, they don't want you to share them with somebody else. So it depends on the group and what the rules are and the terms. But when you're running a group, a way to add more value to the people that participate is to document things, record them, transcribe them, and put them in a central location for them to access.
Right. And certainly a lot of the peer-to-peer groups that I have participated in, we do them virtually once a week or once every other week. And we actually use the same technology that you and I are using here today. We'll have a Zoom meeting so that everybody can go ahead and see each other and participate in that fashion. And we can record those meetings if everybody's in agreement to do that. Which is one form of documentation. But let's go ahead and start to talk a little bit more specific about the software that you've created here to really facilitate this whole aspect of documenting what's going on and maybe what some of the advantages are and how people can do that.
Yep. The vision for the software is to be an all-in-one solution for both managing the group and running the meetings, and to be a central repository of information. And so it does include video conferencing, and Zoom is a fantastic tool. So one of the things that we wanted to incorporate are features that are similar to Zoom, where you can all be on the screen at the same time, you can see each other, you can record those meetings. But we also made it so those meetings are all saved in one place. And so we can go back and we can see our meeting history, and we can also save the chat all in one place. And so we could go back to our meeting from last week and we could see exactly what the chat was. And the chat even continues in one thread. And so we can see the chat that we had during the meeting, and we can also continue that chat in between the meetings, but all in one place, rather than having to jump over to a Facebook group or have some of it get lost in text messaging or some of it scattered in email. It's all just one chat. In terms of having the agenda, we built our agenda and a timer right into the meeting room. And so on the screen, everybody can see we're currently in the welcome session, or it's currently Greg's turn in the hot seat, or eventually, some people like to have training segments, or they may have guest speakers come into their masterminds. And so there'll be a way that we can have a teaching session, and we're focused on this topic right now. And up next is Greg's hot seat. And we can see via an on-screen timer that he's got 5 minutes left. And so we know, he knows that it's time to wrap it up if he starts rambling a little bit. And then in addition to having the agenda on screen, so one of the challenges we found was we were bouncing from different application to application, both during the meeting and in between the meetings. We'd have several tabs open, and some people get lost in the wrong window and they're not paying attention to the meeting because they're trying to look at their goals that we'd saved on a spreadsheet over here somewhere else. So we also integrated goal tracking within the application. So you can set your goals and get reminders through the software, which is called Mastermind Manager. And then during the meeting that you're having, the goals actually show up in the meeting room so that the rest of the group can see what you said you were going to do. And so it adds enhanced accountability, because you can't get away from the fact that last week I said I was going to hire a virtual assistant, or I was going to write this chapter of my book, or whatever it is. It's all right there in the meeting, and people don't have to ask. So it saves some time. The other group members don't have to say, what was your goal last week? Or what's your long-term vision for this? What's your 5-year goal? It's all right there in one place so that we can see what the other people are working on. And that way we can contribute more and spend less time on the logistics and details and managing the tools.
And I think that everything that you have described, and I know because I've actually seen the software as well, but everything that you've described works really well for a virtual type of mastermind, which in fact most masterminds today probably are. It's difficult to get a lot of high-powered CEO types in a room together on a regular basis. But every now and then you will go to a live mastermind. Like I said, I'm going to a live one next week. In my peer-to-peer masterminds that I participate in, probably twice a year we get together live. We pick a date and a time, and we'll spend a half a day, maybe even a whole day, doing a live event together, just so that we're in the same room and can actually press a little flesh. But describe how your software works in a live environment, I guess.
Yep. And those are features that we're just starting to implement, but are also really part of the long-term vision, because I agree with you. There's no replacement for the in-person groups, and the best groups seem to combine both of them. They have a virtual component, but they also get together at least once or twice a year. Some groups meet weekly virtually, and they meet in person monthly. So the way that the app will help that is to make those experiences more cohesive. And so the conversations that happen in the in-person meeting can still show up during the virtual meeting. And we'll make it so that we can record those in-person meetings if people want to, and transcribe those and have those all in the same place. One place for scheduling, one place to document your goals. And if you meet somebody at the in-person meeting who's part of your group, you can go to their profile and you can still see what their goals are. So you don't have to have the conversation about what were your goals. You could actually just look on the app or look on screen and look at their profile and see what they're working on. So it can still facilitate the conversation for an in-person meeting, even though you're having the meeting face-to-face.
Okay. Now, before we end our episode here today, I want to ask you kind of what is the number one thing that you would recommend to people as it relates to getting into a mastermind or participating in one? What's your best advice for people?
I think, if people are not in a group, I think the number one tip is to find at least one person. It doesn't have to be a group of 5 or 10 people even to start with. Even having regular check-ins and accountability and goal setting with one person is massively influential to helping people achieve their success. There's studies that say that just by committing to do a goal, you can achieve maybe 40% of it. But if you commit to somebody else, you might go to 65%. But if you have a predetermined check-in time, and by saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it by this time, and next week I'm going to check in with Greg and tell him that I did it, you can increase your chances of success by 95%. So it's leveraging with another person, goal setting, planning, and accountability. That's the key. And so if you don't have a group, find a way to do that with one person. And if you do have a group, make sure that's a part of your process.
And I absolutely agree 1,000% with that. I have, my wife asks me frequently, well, how come you're doing this group? What are you really getting out of it? And the real big thing is the accountability factor, because there are things that I accomplish because I've told my groups, I'm going to do this by this date. And I make sure that happens, because I don't want to show up and be like, oh, well, I didn't quite get it done or whatever. You want to be able to say, hey, I've got this goal. This is what I'm working on. I'm going to have it done by this date, and be able to show up and say, yeah, I did it.
It works.
It really does. So as we do wrap up here, give us a little bit of spiel here about your software and your company and how people can stay in touch with you and get a hold of this.
Yep, absolutely. So the website is mastermindbetter.com. My email address is just jeff@mastermindbetter.com. And part of the reason that the domain is Mastermind Better, the name of the software is Mastermind Manager, but our vision is to really help people mastermind better. And we want to be the white label or technology solution for all the best mastermind groups in the world. And it's not about our brand, it's about your business. And so we work with a lot of professional mastermind group facilitators who are going to be branding the app under their name, using their logo, their business, and just creating a subdomain at our website so that it's a bit generic, and we fade into the background. And the focus is the business, maybe the coach, the facilitator, and the group members. So we're just the tool that helps people to mastermind better, and it's about the software getting out of the way and letting people achieve those results.
Absolutely awesome. Anybody that's listening to or watching this podcast today, this is going to be huge for your business. I'm telling you right now, you need to mastermind. It makes all the difference in the world. I'm going to put the links to mastermindbetter.com in the show notes. And I just really want to thank Jeff for taking the time to share his expertise and knowledge with us today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of 20 Minutes of Influence. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you are interested in booking myself as a speaker at one of your events, or are interested in any of my coaching programs, please visit gregjameson.com.